welcome back to On the Ball, the podcast series from the Vanderbilt Sports and Society Initiative. I'm Andrew Maraniss, and our guest today is Dr. Alex Diamond, who is just a terrific and highly respected figure around here on campus and around the country when it comes to sports medicine for kids. Dr. Diamond is professor in Department of Orthopedic Surgery, Department of Pediatrics, Department of Neurological Surgery here at Vanderbilt, and director of the Vanderbilt Youth Sports Health Center. He's also the team physician for Vanderbilt and the Predators and many high schools. What don't you do, Dr. Diamond?
I guess sleep sometimes, but no, I appreciate that Andrew. It's an honor to be here with you, and I've been a big fan of yours and for a long time and all the work that you do. And I think I do remember our first meeting though is I don't think either one of us knew who each other were, but we bonded over the fact that our young daughters at the time were hiding underneath the seats from Mr. C at a game. So I think we got off to a good start there.
Yeah, that's right. My daughter obviously as a few years ago. She was afraid of mascots. I'm not sure if that has gone away. A little bit of a scary mascot, but yeah, we did bond over that. That was fun. So if people haven't met you yet, they can typically find you at any Vanderbilt sporting event. It seems like you're everywhere. So before we get into the learning more about this youth sports health center, I wanted to ask you a little bit about your own sports background. And I read a bio that said that at one point you hoped to become a professional basketball player when you were a kid. For me, I wanted to be the shortstop for the Milwaukee Brewers, and I eventually realized that that was never going to happen.
Yeah.
Where did you grow up, and what was the role of basketball in your life as a kid?
Yeah, so I grew up in a really small coal mining town up in northeastern Pennsylvania. I was actually the fourth generation of my family in that town, probably about 12,000, 15,000 people. And so I actually loved growing up there. I think it was a place that really taught me a value about hard work and loyalty and taking care of each other as a community. And I just absolutely loved living there and growing up there. And sports was actually huge, part of that. And basketball has always been my passion, love. I enjoyed other sports, played a few others, but basketball was just the thing for me. And so it really provided a lot of opportunity for me, both locally and I think I played in high school, and then quickly realized that at that point that it probably was not going to happen. But I went to Duke for undergrad, and I, for whatever reason, I've had no connections to Duke, but fell in love with Duke as a basketball school. But still stayed passionate about going there. It was a good thing they also had some good medical programs to sort of help me along the way. I didn't have to change gears there.
Yeah. So the same story said that, yeah, one hand you wanted to be a basketball player, but you also had a dream of being a pediatrician from a young age. Is that true?
Yeah, that's very true. I just always enjoyed working with kids and being someone that sort of helped the next generation. And I just kids are just fun to work with, and so I sort of reached a point where did I want to when I was in medical school and deciding do I want to do pediatrics or orthopedic surgery, because at the time really the only way that I thought you could work with sports was to be an orthopedic surgeon. And but around that time, there was this sort of new specialty called primary care sports medicine, where you could do pediatrics or emergency medicine or family medicine, and then go on and do specialized sports training afterwards. And so it really enabled me to do what I loved, still get my pediatric training and take care of young kids, but at the same point, still live in the world of sports. And Vanderbilt at the time was one of the few places in the country that actually offered a pediatric sports medicine fellowship. And that's what actually brought me to Vanderbilt, and training at the time with Andrew Gregory, who's still here, one of our team physicians, and Kurt Spindler was the head of division at the time that many of your listeners may know of. But Vanderbilt's just been a wonderful place for me, not only training, but it's just such a collaborative place, and people really care and do things for the right reasons. And so it's been an honor to be here, going on 19 years now, and that goes fast. But Vanderbilt's been a great place for me.
All right, but I want to learn more about that. But going back to your Duke days, um, what was the what was it like being a basketball crazy student at Duke? Were you one of those people camping out in Shashevskyville? Did they have good teams while you were there?
Yeah, so it was interesting. My first year there was the year when we were not very good. It was sort of a almost backward year. Football was going on to a bowl game, and basketball was, I think, if not last, we were close to the bottom that year in 1995, and then sort of turned things around. So by the time that I finished up, I actually stayed an extra year in 1999, back at the Final Four. So I sort of saw it from cycle through. But I was fortunate enough to actually make some connections while I was there, um, and sort of be involved with the basketball program on a superficial level and get to know some folks. So I was fortunate enough that I was usually given some comp tickets, so I didn't have to camp out. But I was there,
Okay.
and the environment was just incredible. It was a great place, and just again pretty similar to Vanderbilt. Again, I think it's just good people, and schools trying to do the right things across the board, and made
Mhm.
some really lifelong friends there.
So you mentioned the opportunity you had coming to Vanderbilt to study. Um, what did you describe it as? Sports pediatrics or
Yeah,
um,
pediatric sports medicine. Yeah.
pediatric sports medicine? Do you know the roots of like why was Vanderbilt sort of ahead of the game on that?
Yeah, I think at the time, again, when I was applying for fellowship, there was probably only maybe 3 to 5 programs in the whole country that actually said we want to specialize in pediatric sports medicine, and offer that as a fellowship. Paul Stricker, who's now in California, was one of the first here at Vanderbilt and established the fellowship along with Dr. Spindler. And then Andrew Gregory sort of took it on by the time I came through. And I think it was just an emerging field. I think it was just wasn't something that was naturally thought about. And so, but I think in a lot of ways, Vanderbilt sort of had a lot of forethought in providing this opportunity, and caring for our youngest of athletes, and recognizing their needs as well.
Yeah. Um, what would the situation be without it? I mean, I'm trying to think, you would just go to an adult orthopedist and they might not understand a kid's body or like what is the advantage?
Yeah, I think we commonly say in pediatrics is that, kids just aren't little adults, and so you can't treat them the same way. And again, it doesn't mean that those people aren't qualified to do those things, but it's
Mhm.
just different. Same thing, like you don't want me treating adult hypertension and diabetes and those sort of things. It's different. We all have different skills, and I'd say the same thing. Kids are not just little adult athletes. They're their own thing. And so yeah, at those times you would maybe see your general pediatrician who's maybe really good at pediatrics, but maybe not understood the orthopedic stuff as well because it's just not something they did regularly. And same thing, maybe saw an adult orthopedist who was really great at the musculoskeletal stuff, but maybe not so much as at relating to an 8-year-old as they are to relating to a 65-year-old knee replacement. And so
Hmm.
I think just creating that niche where, that's all we do all day long. And so what I see is basically patients college age and younger, throughout the day as part of the Children's Hospital here at Vanderbilt, and then fortunate enough to take care of our teams at night and on the weekends.
Hmm. I know you're somebody that really believes strongly in the role that sports can play in a young person's life. I mean, what do you see as those benefits that are important while you're a kid, but also, lifelong benefits of participating in sports as a
Yeah.
young person?
Absolutely. Just like we say, bad habits form early, so can good habits. And I think sports is really one of those good habits. And I continually say we need more kids playing sports, not less. And it is true, we always talk about these life lessons, but learning to fail and get back up again, learning to be a leader, and being a work together cooperatively on a problem or an issue. And all comes from sports, and the trying and the failing and the succeeding and the winning and the losing, and that competition, but also again the pure physical benefits of sport. And I think we're even learning more and more now the mental and social emotional benefits that we get from sport is just critical. And I just don't think there's anything else that we do or can do from an activity standpoint, or an extracurricular standpoint, that provides those benefits and lessons like sports does. And not that drama and music and other things don't teach you any of those things too. I just think it's unique when it
Mhm.
comes to sports. And but we've had this conversation before is that, but it's just we can't just throw the balls out there and say play and think all that happens. Particularly in today's world, I think maybe when we were younger and we were organizing our own games and in charge of things, and there weren't really that adult or parent interaction. It was more on us to do it, but today's world, everything is so organized and adult run that we can't lose the kid focused, kid goals of sport and trade them out for the adult oriented or adult focused goals. And so I think we have to be really intentional on how we approach sports for kids to make sure they are still having that fun and gaining all those benefits that we talk about.
Hmm. Yeah, and sort of tying that to something you mentioned earlier about we need more kids playing, not fewer. There's a lot of studies out there about kids quitting, around age 13, 14. You see a lot about how expensive youth sports have become. Are we actually seeing more kids participating in sports, or is there an overall downward trend?
Yeah, I think across the board, I think we're seeing a downward trend. Now, I will say our recent high school numbers have actually shown there was a big dip around COVID and sort of a slow uptick, and now we're sort of gaining back up to where we were pre-pandemic from high school numbers. But if you look at, excuse me, youth sport outside of high school, those numbers are declining, and I think one of my biggest fears is what you mentioned is that we're pricing out our kids and our families from sport. Gone are for the most part, are your local town or city little league or pickup or rec basketball, and there's travel and all these other groups that cost money, and that's just the money to participate, let alone the money of getting from spot to spot. And again, I don't want to negate that either because those are getting kids moving and playing, and I think that's a good option for folks. But it can't be our only option. We need to somehow find a way to revive kids who just want to play for fun, and get those benefits and that enjoyment from sport.
Yeah, I see that. My son's 12. He's a travel baseball player.
Yeah,
But when it comes to other sports, well, first of all, there's a whole issues with just youth sports and the expense of playing travel ball. But
yeah,
what are the opportunities if he just wants to play basketball or soccer or some other sport just for fun? It seems like the older you get, the fewer and fewer of those opportunities are
yeah.
out there.
Yeah, and I think when you get into the era of travel again, it is competitive, and so you start feeling those pressures of, well, if I'm not playing the sport year round, I'm not going to be able to even be on that travel team that I love and that I get enjoyment out of. And so there's that focus to specialize at younger and younger ages, and so they end up missing out on trying a sport that they may not have thought they would like, and maybe they end up loving it, and maybe that ends up being their main sport that they're really
Hmm.
good at, and they never even would have known it if they would have focused on the one that they thought was going to be their sport when they were nine. And the other
Hmm.
part of that, is that early sports specialization we know leads to unfortunately burnout and injury, and the two biggest causes that we see for kids wanting to stop sport is injury, the fear of injury, or they're just not enjoying it. And a lot of that has to do with the quality and behavior of coaches. And we see that repeated over and over again from study to study when we ask parents that information.
What's your recommendation on when it comes to like burnout and overuse? So Charlie has just finished his fall ball season for baseball. They played 6 tournaments. They'll start their spring games probably in March, I would imagine. There's this off season right now where he'll be playing basketball, but also going to baseball practice still twice a week for indoor hitting and things like. Is your is the best practice that you take a complete break from your sport for a few months, or you just sort of watch the volume of pitches that you might have, or how does that break down?
Yeah, I think our approach to that has sort of evolved a little bit over the last, 5, 8 years. Because I think initially, we're so fearful of is that, we're sort of mandating they take 3 months off and not do X or Y or Z. But I even think back to myself is I love basketball. And if I could play basketball every single day of my life, I would have done it. And I did do it. And that was enjoyable for me. And so for someone to tell me you can't and you shouldn't play during that time, I think is probably also wrong. And so I think like most things, the pendulum swing back and forth, and sometimes we find ourselves back in the middle. And so I would say if you have a child that is passionate about it and is directing their own schedule, then I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think where we start to get into issues is where the parents or the adults are dictating the schedule, even when the kid's saying, "Hey, I need a break or I want to do something else." And so I do think it's probably important to take some scheduled break, whether that's 1 month to 2 months to 3 months away from the organized part of that sport and play other things. But if they still want to do on their own some training or some other here one-offs here and there, I don't think there's anything wrong with that if the child wants to do that. Now, I think big picture, and you've had a really good conversation, I know, with Jason Zaremski in the past, who's really one of the experts in the country on pitch counts and those sort of things. I think those are still valuable because mechanically and structurally, there is only so much we can do. Um, but I think the other part about it too is we've also seen, I think, a lot of injuries when we sort of do these big peaks and valleys. So a lot of volume, and then the season ends. We're like, let's rest, and we shut it all the way down, and then we season starts up again, and we ramp right back up. So I think decreasing, but not all the way back to zero, and sort of maintaining some maintenance, I think is we're seeing is probably a good thing.
Okay. All right. Well, let's get to the Vanderbilt Youth Sports Health Center. I was fortunate to come to a presentation that you and former Vanderbilt great basketball great Shane Foster put on for some members of the community. What is the Youth Sports Health Center, and what's new with the center?
Yeah. So first off, it's been awesome working with Shane. It's one of those moments for me that I've been here long enough that I've seen our athletes go on to become, amazing adults and contributors to society and parents and all this sort of thing. So first off, it's just exciting to see Shane and all that he's accomplished for all that he's done on the court. I will say he'll be forever known in Nashville for all the things that he's done off the court. So that's pretty cool. Um, but one of the things that we were talking about, as mentioned, is the Vanderbilt Youth Sports Health Center, which is a brand new initiative through the Monroe Carroll Junior Children's Hospital here at Vanderbilt, in partnership with Vanderbilt Sports Medicine, and it's a one of its kind in the entire Southeast region, and it's an entire center dedicated to the health and well-being of and medical care of the young athlete. Um, and so it brings together specialists from every part of the children's hospital, not just orthopedics and sports medicine, but cardiologists and pulmonologists, endocrinologists and radiologists and ER folks. So again, I don't want to leave anyone off, but it's a long list. We have 23 different specialties that have committed providers and staff to the center. And so if you have an injury playing sports, if you have a condition, an underlying medical condition or illness, and you wonder how that possibly affects your ability to participate in sport and activities, this is an opportunity to meet with folks who, again, not only are experts in their field, but understand those unique needs of athletes.
Amazing. And is that, I know you're out in Mount Juliet. Obviously there's the main children's hospital here on campus. Is the center spread across the different locations in the area?
It is, and so as like all of us, as Nashville continues to get in this whole area, Middle Tennessee gets busier and busier. We realize that families do want to try to seek as much healthcare close to home as possible, and so we don't have just one set spot where you have to come. So, depending on which specialist is involved, any of our Vanderbilt facilities are a potential option for you. So, across Williamson and Wilson and Rutherford and Sumner counties, in addition to Davidson, we have locations available for folks depending on, again, which specialist they need to be seeing. But
Okay.
there's one number to call, and that's sort of uh, the key of this is that you can call that one number and say, what, my kid has been letting me know he's having a lot of chest pain or shortness of breath when he's exercising. That will automatically take you where you need to go. Or, hey, I twisted my knee playing last night. It'll take you where to go. So it's one number makes things sort of easy for you to get through.
Okay. Do you know the number off the top of your head? And is there
Yeah,
a
let's see if
website
I do.
people
I
can go
think
to
it's
also?
Yeah, I think it's 615. I want to say 421 8900. I should know that off the top of my heart. I'll get that for you. Let me confirm
Okay. Sorry
on
to
that.
put you on the spot there.
That's okay.
We can come back to it.
I probably just
Um,
got fired for not knowing that off the top of my head.
you'd have to fire yourself though, I guess, right?
That's true. Yeah, yeah. I should actually find myself.
All right. One of the other things I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, before I get to this next question, are there certain types of injuries or reasons that are most common that you hear from families that are coming to you that and are those different in any significant ways from reasons why an adult might have a sports related reason to get in touch with a medical professional?
Yeah, I would say, the two biggest that we've sort of seen tend to be musculoskeletal and cardiac issues are sort of the two leading things that we are seeing right now through the center. Certainly this is only our second year in existence, so we'll sort of see how that trends. But I certainly think that probably would fit across national trends on what things are most likely to see. But, again, we've had so far in the last year of our 22, 23 specialties, we've had patients see anywhere from 16 to 18 of those. So whether it's uh, vision or an ear, issue or asthma. So we're seeing it across the board. And I will say that kids are different than adults. They their bodies are different. Their physiology is different, and so yeah, we do see different diagnoses and dynamics when it comes to kids. Now, the good news is kids, even though they may be a little bit more prone to getting injured, they're way better healers, and so that's always exciting and nice for us. And they want to get better and they want to get back to their sport, and so it's exciting for us to be able to sort of help them along their journey with that.
Yeah. Um, you're obviously really active at a national level with national associations, of like the TSSAs of the country. Also, you've been involved in having legislation passed in the state of Tennessee. At the meeting a couple weeks ago, you all mentioned the Tennessee Safe Stars initiative, which I think is really important, has effects far beyond Vanderbilt. Can you talk about the Safe Stars program and the reasons why that was important for you to launch?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, with our center, with the Vanderbilt Youth Sports Health Center, the key is, again, we want to be here to serve our community and take care of patients and families. And that's of the utmost importance. But what I really wanted to do from the center is be more than that. And that's important, but be more, and do things and do more things for the community and be uh, not only just an advocate but a partner with the community. And so, what else can we do to help kids um, play play sports, do it safely, and do it in a positive environment? And I think that gets to some of that intentionality we talked about before. And so, one of the and so with the center, one of the big things that we really want to focus on is advocacy work. And one of those programs that we created, which has actually been sort of actually predates the center, is this initiative you mentioned called the Safe Stars program in Tennessee. And this is a partnership between Vanderbilt and the Tennessee Department of Health. And it was developed by a multidisciplinary group here at the medical center, but also outside the medical center, but across the state. Other healthcare professionals, but really people who work boots in the ground in the youth sport and high school sport world. So, athletic directors, principals, coaches, parents, um, Department of Health, Department of Education, TOSAA, as you mentioned. And for about 4 to 5 years, we sat in a room and we sort of went through and said, what can we do to make sports safer across the state? And so what we came up with was three levels: bronze, silver, and gold. And bronze is what we determined was, if you are going to sponsor a sport as a school or being a youth sport organization, and that's going to be your mission, this is the bare minimum that you should be able to provide for your students and your student athletes in regards to health and safety. But then we also created additional levels, knowing that everybody's at a different place. Everyone has different resources. Everyone has different knowledge. Um, And so what we wanted to do was create a system where we can get you connected, get you started on some minimums, but let's keep pushing. Let's keep getting you higher and higher, and let's get you up to what we would consider the gold standard at that gold level. It's an entirely free program, and most of it is focused on either policy or training because that's all free. And all it takes is some time and some commitment to do it. And so for every criteria that we're saying, hey, you need to be at, we actually provide you all those resources and training. So if it's a policy, we provide you a template where you can plug and play. If it's a education thing, we provide you that free training on how to be able to accomplish that. And then for the bronze, or excuse me, for the silver and gold, there may be some costs associated with it. But again, it's also the stepwise thing. So again, everyone can sort of find where they can plug in, but it serves, I think, twofold having the levels. One is me as a parent, I can sort of say, I'm trying to decide which league to sign my son or daughter up for. Let me go see, have they actually made a commitment to my child's health and safety and doing one of these three things, or are they not even on that list? And what they're saying maybe not be necessarily true. Or, oh wow, that's really where they are. They're at this silver level. I'm gonna do that. But again, it also I think gives people that reach to say, okay, here's where I'm at. I'm gonna keep building along those lines.
And apart from that, the related was the Smart Heart Act that you were involved with in ensuring that there is AEDs in high schools in the state. Um, how does that square with the star rating system?
Yeah. So these sort of worked together, and I appreciate you bringing both those up. So Safe Stars started as a voluntary program in 2000, I want to say 17ish, I think, and then we were able to get it passed in the law in 2020, where every public high school had to meet at least the bronze level. And then shortly after that, about 2 years later, after the Damar Hamlin incident, we got some renewed push and being able to extend the Safe Stars law to now include, again, every public high school or middle school that sponsored sports, as well as any youth league serving kids 14 and under if they were participating on public property. So those Safe Stars laws are there. Now, part of the Safe Stars criteria, one of those is having CPR and AED training for people on site. At least one person on site has to be able to do those things. Um, and then at the silver or gold level, actually, that involves having an AED available just in different settings. The goal is to have that AED within reach and on the patient's chest within 3 minutes. So if you have an AD, but that may not be the case. That 3 minute limit, you're at the silver level. If you have an AD and in all circumstances you can get there within that 3 minutes, then you're at the gold level. And then so what the Smart Heart law then did was sort of just add on to that, where it then required that AED within public schools to be within a 3 minute access point. So those two laws together have enabled our schools across the state to really be at a level that I would like to say is probably unprecedented across the country. I think other states are again doing really good jobs in coming along, but I would like to look at Tennessee as a leader in this space, which is exciting.
So my son is playing school basketball. He had to have a sign or a form signed by his pediatrician and initialed by a parent in about 15 different areas, most of which dealt with concussions. Where do concussions rank among the concerns for young athletes?
Yeah, I still think it's there are four major things that cause death in young athletes. We call them the four H's. The first one is H for heart. Second is for heat. The third is for head, and the fourth we cheat a little bit. We say heme, HEME, which is blood. Now it's with
Okay.
our um, sickle cell folks. Um, and so, but by far, cardiac is the most, probably about 75%, with heat second, and then concussion third. So still a critical piece that we're focusing on and trying to limit the head contacts as much as possible in our different games, and I think we've done a really good job as far as recognition and responding to concussion. So I think across the board, everyone is a whole lot more aware of what to watch for, and knowing that if they're concerned, you remove that athlete from play until they're able to see someone, and then sort of gradually build them back into sport as they improve. I think the other part of that that's been exciting to see is that I think it's improved things in schools, because we also then recognize that yes, getting back to sport is important, but so is getting back to learning. And so I think that collaboration between educators and coaches in that world, I think, has been a really good thing that's come out of the concussion stuff.
Mhm. I mentioned heat, and just living in Nashville for the last 30 years, to me, the summers are even hotter than they used to be. It feels like. What's happening in regard to coaches dealing with heat? To me, from the outside, it seems like it's gone are the days where a coach like Bear Bryant, like famously, wouldn't let his players drink any water, during practice. I know here at Vanderbilt, great care is taken, but I'm not sure. Does that extend all the way down to the youth level? Is there still a lot of education that's needed? Are people changing practice times or behaviors to account for the heat?
Yeah, I think like most of the things, I think we're moving in the right direction, but I think continued education is the key. And I think heat is probably one of those next ones that is going to be a main focus, because we've seen a significant drop with those sort of policies you mentioned, like knowing when to practice, uh, water breaks, how we train our athletes is really important. Checking the weather and the wet bulb globe thermometer, so we sort of know when we should be practicing and what gear to remove and all those sort of things. That's really improved things. But for the last probably 10 years, we've sort of been at this stagnant level of, yes, we're way better than we were, but we continue to see this sort of this baseline amount of heat deaths across the country. And so doing some digging, not myself, but a group of researchers across the country, uh, and specifically looked at football, because most of the heat deaths in sport are through football. And what they found is that almost entirely all of those were in linemen, and almost all of those were during conditioning sessions. And so now what we're really sort of starting to look at is what makes linemen different than other players. And clearly the body habitus is, the one that jumps at you from the start. And and the way they play the game is different. And so the way that we have to train these athletes is different. You can't have a lineman doing the same things from a conditioning standpoint as a wide receiver. It doesn't make sense for the game, and it certainly doesn't make sense from a medical standpoint. And so I think the next area where I think I'm really excited about making a big breakthrough is, how do we train linemen? They still need to be trained, right? They still need to be football players. They still need to be in shape. But how can we do that more in a safer aspect for them compared to other positions? Because they really seem to be ones vulnerable. Now, again, we still need to check the wet bulb globe and know what should be out there, and frequent hydration and all that sort of stuff. But I'm excited about where we go next, and particularly working with coaches alongside. I'm not an expert on how you train a football player and how you work them out. Our strength and conditioning coaches are, our coaches are. Um, but hopefully putting these groups together, I think all these programs you mentioned, they all came from collaboration. Not one person is doing all this stuff. And so the more feedback we can get from people who are doing this and who are educated and have really good ideas to work together with our medical folks, I think is where we can make big differences. So I'm excited where that's going to go. I think one of the big things, even I would just put out there for high school and youth, is that we need to stop using exercise as punishment. Um, that is one of the big things where we're seeing some of these deaths is emotional response to poor play, bad, not listening, whatever it was. And so, and I've talked with several coaches, well-respected coaches who have done well, who have told me I can make the same point with one up down as I can with 100 up downs. And so, and having that conditioning actually be built into the normal practice plan. So that way you can account for their overall load, and we're not just doing it at the end of a full practice that we've already had and like, oh my goodness, now we got a condition. So those are some of the things that, again, I've learned from coaches, when we sort of say, hey, we need to address this issue. What are your thoughts? And those are brilliant ideas that they came up with that hopefully will start taking more hold as we move forward. And I think the last thing I'd say about heat is when we talk about policy, is that typically in an emergency, we call 911 and we want to get that person as fast as we can to the hospital to that higher level of care. Heat's probably one of those issues where we, yes, we want to immediately call 911, but we may not be in a rush when EMS gets there to get them to the hospital, meaning what we say is cool first, transport second. And so it is critical to get that body temperature down. And so the sooner and faster we can do that, the better chance they have of survival. So call 911, but go ahead and start cooling that athlete. Get ice bags, dunk them in the, in the cattle trough with the water and the ice, and then transport them once their body temperature is back down. So that's one of the keys I'd say again, cool first, transport second.
You know so much about like advocacy in healthcare, and if you're a young athlete, it's going to be hard to talk tell your coach like you just be called soft or something, if you're like, I can't run anymore. I can imagine that. Or as a parent, your kid's on a team, if you're the parent that is complaining about something, you worry your son or daughter is going to lose playing time or be removed from the team. Like, what are the what's your advice to
Yeah.
either athletes or parents on how they advocate for themselves on all these issues that you've been discussing?
Yeah, absolutely. First off, I'd say never be, as a parent, never be afraid to advocate for your child. You care about them more than anyone else does, and nothing takes the place of being in that role. And so I don't think a parent ever needs to feel bad about advocating for their child, particularly when it comes to their health and safety. The second part, we've been really fortunate. Every other summer we host a youth sports health and safety conference for the community. It involves healthcare professionals as well as non-healthcare folks, those people that work in sports, parks and rec, athletic directors, coaches, those sort of things. And we've been fortunate that over this last 10, 12 years of doing this, two of our keynote speakers came from the military. One was a three-star Marine Corps general. And the other one was this past year, uh, Army general, who actually was involved in the capturing of Saddam Hussein. And what I learned from them is that same thing. They don't advocate for themselves. They don't want to be seen as soft or weak or not carrying out the mission. But what they are really good about doing is advocating for their brother or sister next to them. And so because they care about them and they're in the trenches with them. And so what I would say is, yes, I think it's a good life skill to learn how to advocate for ourselves. And I think that's important. But maybe if you're not advocating for yourself, be willing to advocate for your friend or your teammate. And I think that's where we've seen a really big difference. And I have definitely had several patients that have said, yeah, I didn't know what was going on, but my buddy pulled me over and took me to my coach because he was worried about something. And I think that's great to be able to get to that point.
All right, a couple more questions, and I'll let you go. Strength training. Are there guidelines on ages when kids should be or not be doing certain things? Have those changed in recent years as more is learned? What are the current recommendations there?
Yeah, that's a great question. All the questions, you're never supposed to say great question because they're all great questions. But that's an exciting one because during my time from fellowship 19 years ago to now, it's a complete 180, which is
Hmm.
really exciting. As we get more data and more research, things change, so we can sort of be experts and say one thing, and 5 years later, like, well, that's not what you said. Well, because we've learned more, and that's a good
Yeah.
thing to evolve and have better answers. And so when I first started out, the teaching was kids should not lift weights because they had open growth plates, and growth plates, that's how they grow, and you could damage them and you stunt their growth or cause other deformities or things like that. But after some really good research, particularly by a guy by the name of Avery Feigenbaum, who's up at the College of New Jersey, he's really made this his life passion. And what they've shown is that that's not the case. And in fact, strength may actually be almost sort of the centerpiece of all of our other physical fitness criteria, whether it's endurance or speed or whatever else it may be. So strength may actually be the key component of that. But what's important about it is one, it's not so much how much you lift, it's how you lift. So you absolutely have to have the right form and you have to do things the right way. when you're lifting, because certainly injury can occur if you're not doing things fundamentally the correct way. So that's been a big change. That so yeah, at this point I always allow my families to lift weights. I always say you should start off body weight, and then gradually increase from there. But if you can't do it the right form, then you're not ready to do it yet, and back down on the weight. I think the other thing that I've mentioned to the kids when they're lifting is that you will absolutely get stronger when you do that, but you may not see the definition and the bulk and the other stuff that you sort of want right away, because while you're still growing, your body's going to use all that energy and nutrition to grow. And until that growing is done, you're not going to get some of those other visible things. Now you'll see the strength increases, so absolutely do it. But if you're worried about the looks, that will come, but it's usually after you're done growing.
I don't want to put you on the spot again, but for people who are interested in more information on the Youth Sports Health Center, or just more information in general about everything we've been talking about, is there a place they can go for the center? And are there other good sources of information just on youth sports and how that intersects with orthopedics or the other topics we've talked about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is I don't have to fire myself, which is good news for my wife. The phone
Yeah.
number is 615-421-8900, to call the Youth Sports Health Center. You can always go through the website at the Children's Hospital. If you just do Google Vanderbilt Youth Sports Health Center, you'll be able to find a lot of information on that site and how you get plugged in and the different specialties and services available. If you're interested in about the Tennessee Safe Stars initiative and more information on that and what the criteria are and how you actually achieve it, you can, if you just Google Tennessee Department of Health, Tennessee Safe Stars, or if you just do Tennessee Safe Stars Initiative, it's on their website, and it's really pretty straightforward. If you have questions about that, particularly say, hey, we're really interested, there is a staff member of the Department of Health that you can contact on that website that will help you walk through the steps of the application, because we really want it to be as simple as possible for you. We know that most people involved in youth sports are volunteers, really well-meaning volunteers who are giving of their time, who have other jobs and other commitments. So again, we didn't want something that was burdensome, but we still want it to be meaningful, right? There's no reason to have it if it's not going to make a difference. So those would be the main websites that would sort of push you
Mhm.
towards. And again, on the Safe Stars website, for all those criteria, like I've said, we want to provide you the free resources how to do that. So if you're looking for just education or training or policy stuff, it's all on that website as well too, in addition to what we're actually asking of you to do.
Terrific. Well, Dr. Diamond, I know you're very busy, but you're a real such an asset to this campus and to this community and really to the country and to youth athletes and their families everywhere. So thank you for your time joining the show. I look forward to seeing you over at Memorial Gym or a football game someday soon.
Sounds great. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate the time, and thank you so much for doing this.